Hey, Fitzy here, back at you. A lot of people have been asking about flanging the door bottoms and how I done it in the video on when I put the door bottom in that Datsun. I'm going to do a little video here now on making door bottoms and how I made the flanges, how I bent them over, and I'm going to be using basic tools to do it and recycled metal. So stick around and see how it's done. People have asked me about what gauge metal I use. I mostly use 20 gauge. What we're going to use here today is probably, I say 22 gauge. It's a later model roof skin off a Ford Ranger. And the reason for that is it's a crown panel. A lot of vehicles, the roof skins are great for doing body panels because they're already crowned. Now I have an English wheel here. I could take some cold rolled steel and run it through the English wheel, but anybody knows anything about English wheels, knowing that it's time consuming to make a crown panel in an English wheel. It's not something that you just go in and spend 2 minutes at it and it's done. So what I picked up years ago, before I even got my hands on English wheels, I used to use a lot of the panels from vehicles that were around in junkyards and dumps and whatnot. Never had a lot of money to buy steel, for that matter. So like I'd be using roof skins and door skins and trunk lids and hoods and using all that for floors and firewalls and whatever I could make. I'm going to show you just a few vehicles just around the door. So like the stuff's around, and you haven't always got to go out and buy yourself a pile of sheet metal to do a job. You can reuse what's around you and what's available. You ask where I get a lot of my metal in that too. As you can see, this is where a lot of it comes from. There's an abundance of 20 gauge. I'm getting low on it now. This was full at one point. All it is old lockers. If you're looking for stuff, if you look across here, roof on my old plow truck, you can see it's a crown panel. It's a crown panel both ways. If you look at it, see? And you know, doors on cars, they're even crowned, as you can see, going both ways. There's no such thing as a flat panel on a car today. Like even right down the length of this roof is crowned. Going across this way, it's crowned. My pickup truck, panel on that, that's crowned. If you haven't seen my side-by-side video, but talking about the crown panels, I made this roof for this. This is a crown panel as well, and that is off a 73 Cuda. That's a roof skin from a 73 Cuda that I modified to fit my side-by-side. So you've all seen the old Chevy that's in the corner of the garage here. This section here and this section here on this car is the front of the roof off a 4-door one of these. I'm at this 30 years. I have 4 body hammers. Some people get carried away with it and love these and collect them. Hats off to them. It's an addiction. It can be. I did have 5 and lost my very first hammer I ever had. I'd never ever come across it. I don't know what I ever done with it. But when it comes to body hammers, it's, to me, is once you get a feel in your hand for a hammer, and you start using it, you kind of stick with the same hammer to do all your work. This is my preference right now. This is the one I like. I haven't used none of these. I haven't used this one in, I'd say, 15 years. Right? But you don't need a pile of body hammers to do metal work. One good hammer with a face on it, and I like this one here because of this edge. That's all you really need. Fellas will say, but you need special hammers for this type of metals and doing this type of work, and you're getting very, very meticulous then, getting into coach building cars and stuff like that. But all we're doing is repairing panels, doing rust repairs. You don't need no more than one body hammer. It's nice to have a dolly, right? I like this one here because it's flat on one side, okay? And it's got a bit of a crown. I do have another one here. That one there is a cheap one I bought when I was 13 years old. It's the first body, one of the first body tools I ever bought, and I still have it in my toolbox and I still use it. I don't use it as much now. I usually use it in the vise a lot for doing thin shapes. But I got this dolly here. I like this for doing door skins, the flat edge. It's got a slight crown on it. It's got nice corners on it, a rolled edge on it. It's nice to work with. But if you haven't got this, and you haven't got this piece of block of steel, that's all you need. As always, you can always find scrap steels around to make stuff out of, and you can use that as a dolly. Sand it smooth and whatnot, and then you can use that as a dolly. Now, I got a body hammer. You haven't got a body hammer, but you got a ball peen and you got a claw hammer. You'll make do with it. The ball peen's good for the round shapes and everything, for making stuff, and there's a bit of a crown on the ball peen end of it. And the claw hammer is good for the pick end. If you want to, if you've got a couple of them kicking around, modify the hammer. I've seen fellas cut these off and make one pick out of them, grind them off. I've seen them round out the edges on them. It's a lot easier to find an old claw hammer around to use for body work. Now the face on them are not as big as what the body one is, but you will get by with it. There's a lot of amazing guys out there that are doing body work and metal fabrication, and this is the only hammer they got. Right? It all has to do with your skills and understanding how metal works more than it is having like the perfect hammer to do the work. This don't do the work, okay? This makes it easier, but it doesn't do the work. The work is done by the guy swinging the hammer and understanding how everything is done. Now you've all seen this in my intro, and you've seen me using it a lot of times. As probably the one of the most universal tools I got. I use it for doing a lot of metal forming because it holds everything down solid. There's nothing fancy about it. It's been cut off with a torch. This end here is not much better. Right? You can put that a dozen different ways on the bench. And that's what I like about it. Say, put a piece of steel on it. Just put a pair of vice grips on it, and you got to clamp down. So now you can take your grinder, you can cut that off. But hang on now, maybe you want to drill holes on this side. There you go. Now you can drill holes on that side there. There's many different ways you can move that around on your bench. And if you want to make it secure, you can just take this here and clamp this to the bench again. And then you got a nice little platform to build off of. I really get a lot of use out of this. And I use this for making a lot of small pieces. You've seen it in my past videos. So it's always good to have a piece of that kicking around. You don't need nothing too big, because it's too awkward to pick up and move around. Now, you haven't got a metal brake. Go find yourself some steel, scrap steel. I've got this piece of I-beam now, I'd say 15 plus years, and it's always sat on the bench underneath the floor here, underneath the front of my bench. And I use this for shaping on long pieces, doing door panels on them. I do a lot of like door bottoms, and I'll use this piece of steel on it because it's nice, flat and straight. It's got a nice sharp edge on it for bending things over. This is all you'd really need. I-beam is better. A lot of fellas say get yourself a railroad track, and I look at that as a crown panel. It's a great nice little dolly for shaping steel. But the problem you got is the best part of the railroad track is upside down, and it's kind of hard unless you put legs on either end to make it sit on the bench, because this edge here is what I'm always using on this here, this top edge. And I like it because it's I-beam, because I can clamp to it. Now, bending over flanges. This piece of angle iron here is not thick enough for what I need today. I used up the last piece I had, but all you need is something simple as a piece of angle iron. You've seen it done by lots of fellas, clamping them on devices and all this type of stuff. If you haven't got a vice or vice grips, a lot of vice grips, see, clamps will do, but it's good to secure it to it. Even if you had a piece of square stock, you can put that to that there and then clamp that onto it and bend your flanges over on that. This is what we're going to make that panel out of today. This is a rough skin of a 2004 Ranger. The newer metals are a lot thinner and easier to work with. Probably good for doing a lot of newer style vehicles and everything. I try to hold on to a lot of the older 60s, 70s and back metals, the rough skins and stuff like that. They always seem to, they're made of a better metal in my mind. Here we have that Ranger roof. As you can see by looking at it laid on the bench, you can see there's a crown in the panel. So I got it marked out here now for a makeshift door bottom, and I got on an angle because if you ever notice, it's never the same on one end as it on the other. There is in most vehicles, almost a lot of them. There's some strange cars that don't have it, but usually one edge of the door is at a right angle, which is usually the flange that you can do. This one here, I'll get into more detail on this here as we get into it. I got the panel all stripped off. All I did it with was a flat wheel, 40 grit flat wheel. I also went over it with a 40 grit oscillator because the flat wheel's gotten old. But like, you don't need an oscillator so much as an electric grinder do just fine for it, right? As you can see now, I never done the inside. First of all, I left this alone because it's a factory panel. It has a factory protected coating on it. All I did was I cleaned the edges up where I cut it with the zip blade and had that. But now, if you look at that, sits on the bench there now, there's a bit of a crown on it, that way. And if you hold it this way, you can actually see there's a crown on it that way. So now, we have a nice little crown panel to start with to make our door bottom. The biggest thing I noticed over the years, when you're making door bottoms out of flat stock, you find that when it's all said and done, it almost looks like it's too low in the middle. And this is the reason for that, is because, like, there's nowhere on a car that is flat. Very rarely. Some 60s cars, some sections of cars have flat sections. You see guys using long blocks and everything on them. But overall, there is a slight crown, vertical, up and down, on a car, going right through the entire car. This way here is very, very slight going through a car, because this will be the door bottom, this way here, this will be the back of the door, this will be the front of the door, right? And this is the way it'll sit on the car. Now I gotta get ready to start doing my flanges. As, for example, on the panel that I'll be doing this on, whatever vehicle it was, this here will be longer this way and longer this way. I'm going to concentrate on getting this side and the bottom done first, and not going to be concerned about that end right yet. So now I'm going to set this up now to put the flanges on the bottom of it. All I got done is I took the tractor thing, and I'm going to have them 3/8 of an inch, roughly about. I'm just going to scribe this. Use this as my reference point. Now I have it scribed. It's hard to see. Now right here on this corner we got it crossing over. What I'm going to do now to show you guys to make it easier on you, I'm going to do this as a marker. Usually all I do is I scribe it because I get a sharper edge, but it's going to be harder to see what I'm doing here because this is only a sample piece. So I have my scribes there, so I'm going to do this in marker to make it more visual. I can still see my scribe, so that will be fine. And marker's not the best. Now, anyway, so now you can see where I crossed over these two corners. So all I like to do there is on these corners is I'll take another scribe mark and I'll mark that this way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that corner right off. Now it's just cut directly right on through the corners. As you can see now, both of them are angled. Now, so when I fold these over, these here will meet on the inside corner to make a nice cornered edge. So I've got my piece of I-beam here now set up. It's got a nice crisp edge on the side of it here. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay this on top of this panel here. And I'm going to line up on both ends where the flange will be. And take my piece of steel, whichever I have, angle iron or whatnot, and put that on there and clamp that in place. Now, got to clamp down, piece of 2-inch square stock on both ends, got the flange there. Now, I'm bending the flange over. You don't want to bend it all the way over too much, just take it a bit at a time as you're going along. Like, just turn around, take it a small bit. Because right here on this rolled edge, this is where the metal will stretch. If you bend it over too far, you're going to stretch the straight edge here, which then it'll warp all the panel up. So just take your time going across. Make life a lot easier for myself. There we go. And you can hear the change in the hammer pitch. Let you know that you got it done. So there's your flange bent over. Bent over on the edge there. All around. So now we got to go do this one here. Same process as before. I'm using the corner edge because this is a 90-degree bend. And I'm just going to put that up tight to the edge there and line up my line there and line up my line there. Clamp it down. So now we've got our two edges bent over. As you can see, now we've got the flange on the inside here. So now the next thing I'll do, a lot of people leave it here and they mount it on their cars, and you know, what I find is then try to weld it on and try to bend this flange over then, as you end up beating this up a lot. I find it's nice to have it so it fits snug on the car, and what I started doing is I start bending the flange over again, so that, and leaving a gap there, and then just tighten it up later on. So all I do with that is I take my ruler. All I went and did is I took the yardstick now, and I got that clamped in place here now, and I'm going to hammer over onto the yardstick. Much the same way as I did it on the other flange. I just bend it over a little tiny bit at a time. There you have the flange, all bent over on the edge. Nice edge going in there. There's a nice crisp edge along here. You don't see nothing, no damage or nothing on it. It's all rolled over. So all you have to do is when you fit it on the car, you just tighten this up a bit by hitting it with a hammer using your dolly on the opposite side of it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bend over this flange here. Now you can see I just got it clamped down again with the yardstick. And I'm going to bend over the flange. You can see this corner here now where I cut it across in diagonals. Watch how it folds into each other. See? You see the way the little edge rolls into itself by cutting a diagonal. So you got a nice neat little corner. Now these are never this sharp on a factory car. Usually what I end up doing, I end up welling this section here when I get it on the car, and then I'll round this corner off a bit just to give it a bit of factory look. There you have the two flange cornered edges to put on the car, and the bottom side is done. Now we're getting up to this side here since I got everything else done. Now right off the bat, by bending over these flanges here, you won't be able to do three sides. You possibly could try it, but first of all, I put this on the car this way. I'll make this corner here fit good, and I'll make sure that this here is lined up with the where it should be on the bottom of the door, the rocker panel or whatever, right? Over here, these edges here, to me, are never ever perfectly straight. I find a lot of these panels, this is over exaggerating it, but are more along the lines of this type of thing here, right? So what I usually do is I leaves that long, like you would. Realistically, if this was laid on the door now, the door would probably come to here somewhere. And it would probably travel down through here, like so, and then curved in a small bit like that. That would be the actual edge of the door, right? So what I do there is after I get a fit on the car and gets it all done, I would actually cut this off flush to the edge of the door and leave it a little tiny bit on the edge. And I'd flip it over, and what I do then is I make up a little strip and I'd actually weld it right onto here. Alright, I got this piece of steel here to simulate the inner structure of the door itself. So like you put the door skin on, this here would be the actual inner structure for argument's sake. Say this is the bottom of the door, this is the inner part, this is where the hinge would be on the car. As you can see, there's a slight crown on the panel, so if you move it out to the edge, you can see that it's not a perfect straight edge, which is like this on a lot of these, right? All I would do is, because the panel is longer, is I would scribe that along there, like so, right? I'm only doing that for the purposes of this now, because on the car you would just have to take the zip blade and cut right along that edge there, like so. You have to take the grinder and cut that right along that edge, right? So I'll cut that off there now. Not worried about the bottom yet. So now our panel fits nice, right? We're in tight to flush to the edge of the panel of the original structure that is on the vehicle. This here would not be touched. There'd be no grinding or nothing on this here, because this is what the door skin would wrap around. Now, all I would do is I make up a little strip of tin like this here, and I cut that and I'd curve that to the edge of it, like so. Now, down here, as you can see, it doesn't look pretty down this corner edge, so what I'll do then is I'll come back and I'll mark this piece again, and I'll bring it up so it flows to one into the other. And so there, now you got your inner flange with your lower flange as well. And all I do with that is I just clamp it on. And see, this is what you're left with now. You have the 3 layers of metal, and all I will do is I'll just weld right down this panel. And what you'll have then is you'll have 3 layers of metal like this here, and all you do is you just weld this entire edge here and then grind it to make it smooth and shape that you want. Like, you could bend the flange over, but you're going to have a perfectly straight edge, and I always find that right here in the center of the panel, when you turn it over, right here in the center of the panel, this here is always wider when you make a door bottom. And I always found that it always had to have a small bit of crown on it, so I never bother with these till I get to this edge here, see? And that way you get a lot nicer setup to go on there. You haven't got to worry about doing anything with that because you got your flange already made up. And so that's basically it. I'll end up welding these corners then after and dressing them after, and grinding this edge and working it so it gets a nice smooth edge. Test fitting it on the car. Right? Sometimes I prefer to do these on the car. I'll do about 75% of the work on the car, and then when I'm happy where everything is to, I'll take it off and do a nice job dressing it all up and then fit it back on the car again. But it's very hard to try to do these like on the bench and then put them on the car and have them fitting perfect. I'll be doing a video on that later on. It might probably be the fall possibly, or later on the summer, because I got a project coming in my race car and I got to put complete door bottoms in that. So I'll do a full video on putting door bottoms in. Anyway, so there's a little panel we made today. Just bent the flanges over on it. But if you look at it closely and look down the panel, you can actually see the crown on the panel. Okay? There's a little crown on that panel. And that's crucial for making door bottoms. Because 2 things. One, a bottom door is never ever flat, and you'll find that when you make it, it'll always look too flat and you'll end up having to fill it all. And number 2 is that because it's a crown panel, it's a tighter panel, so when it comes time to welding it, it's not going to want to flop away from you as much. So, but that's it. Using recycled rough skin off a Ford Ranger to make a door bottom. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope the tips were good, and until next time. So what's your thoughts on sheet metal, buddy? Crown panels, recycled steel, flanges. Huh? What's your take about it? Why didn't you get out of this here, bud?